we are real-time role modeling for each other in this moment because we didn't really have too much of it. So it's your experience, your shared experiences will help other people to feel understood, feel seen, see that they don't have to do it so perfectly. After all, nothing happens that's bad when you show up imperfectly, when you have your clear intention. So we can contribute every day, whether it's by selling, whether it's by sharing, in that kind of conversational way. And we shouldn't shrink ourselves down in the way that we often still are for fear of being judged for doing that sharing.
Hello and welcome to the Liberated Woman podcast, where my guests and I empower ambitious, mission-driven women like you to break free from toxic productivity and embrace a joyful, satisfying life. I'm your host, Tamu Thomas, author of Women Who Work Too Much, leadership coach and keynote speaker. In each episode, we explore personal and professional growth, featuring insightful conversations with inspiring guests, as well as episodes where I explore topics and answer your questions to support your growth and transformation. If you enjoy the show, please do like, subscribe, comment, rate, review, and share. The more listeners I reach, the more impactful guests I can attract to support your journey. Okay, let's begin. Hello, you wonderful people. Welcome back to another episode of the Liberated Woman podcast. And I am let me calm down a little bit. I'm very, very excited to have the lovely Sara Dalrymple with us today, and we're going to have a conversation about sales as a tool for liberation. So I'm going to look over here whilst I quickly read something about Sara, and then Sara can tell us more about her. So Sara D is a sales trainer and mentor for online business owners, and she is here to show us all how to promote our products and services without being salesy, so that we can book more clients and grow our businesses whilst keeping our integrity intact. And let me tell you something else about Sara Dalrymple. This woman's energy is so infectious, she galvanizes the most nervous salesperson to become a shining light, beaming for the people that want to buy their services. One of the things I love about her is talking about making sure we've got our energy in check, and that we're not being dragged around by our energy, that we're channeling our energy in support of the sales we want to make and the services and products we want to provide people with. Because I know that the bulk of Sara's clients and the people interested in her work do work that makes the world a better place. And we can only do that work if we're selling. So without further ado, welcome, Sara.
Thank you so much. At last, I've waited patiently and I finally got invited on. So thanks, Sara. A moment. It's a moment. We're celebrating.
We are celebrating that. I forgot to add, Sara's also an author of a book called More Sales Please, which was like a bestseller in like 7 Amazon categories. It's quoted all over the shop. People talk about this book as being like a sales manual, sales companion. I'm featured in that book. And I'm telling you now, before we do anything, pause this podcast episode. If you haven't got the book already, Toulon and buy that book and then come back. You will not regret it. It is a supreme investment in your sales ability. Now I will stop and hand the mic back over to Sara, who I'm bloody delighted to have on this podcast.
So happy to be here. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. It is just I can't wait for this natter. Let's just get straight into it, shall we?
Okay. So for people who haven't had the pleasure of coming into contact with you, could you please share a little bit about who you are, what you do, and why you do it?
Yes, that Cilla Black moment. What's your name and where do you come from? I'm Sara. Well, as you perfectly introduced me, I'm Sara Dalrymple, Sales with Sara on Instagram, because that is just a little bit more straightforward, and I'm here to just exactly this, right? Just if you're here with a business or you're here with something to talk about or a message that you want to get out there, I want to make sure that you do that in your best possible energy, not in a way that feels really sketchy, not in a way that feels like you're forcing it or having to push it, but just in your kind of natural chitter chatter. We all know how to have a natter, but I'm just here to make sure that you can ultimately make money, become financially secure, and do it in a way that, you know, is you're on your own terms, is without the grind. It doesn't feel like a drag. We don't want a business that's dragging you around.
See what I'm saying? We don't want a business that's dragging us around. And I have seen Sara in action. So, first of all, I benefited from Sara's Instagram content. So, she's already said to you at Sales with Sara. So, please do go and check her out. I benefit from her friendship, which is very valuable and lovely. And I've also benefited from Sara coming into my mastermind and my membership doing workshops on sales. And whether the people have a product-based business, a service-based business, or even people who are employed corporate girlies benefit, because ultimately what you talk about is standing in your power, believing in what you've got to offer, and working with that belief to communicate that with people who are aligned. And I say that because what you share, if you are creative and you expand your mind, it can also be utilized to negotiate for a promotion and pay rise and all of that kind of stuff. So it's really, really foundational, nourishing stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, it comes down to sales skills in however you want to apply those sales skills. When you feel solid about your ability to talk about what it is that, you know, gets you fired up, when you know how to do that in a way that doesn't blow your system out, you also give yourself the gift of knowing you can always make money. You can always get more money, like you say. You can always, you know what to say and how to say it in a way that is going to have people wanting to pay you more money, wanting to work with you, wanting to stay in your world. So it really is a case of, I think, rebranding sales skills is so much more than that transactional piece of like, would you like to buy this? Because actually in this moment that we're in right now, it is so much more than that. It's everything you do, from the relationships that you have, you know, at home, in the workplace, on the internet, in real life, wherever, however you're having them. It's having people, you know, even, well, I'll just wind it back a minute. Like, even we all know how it feels to when you're watching someone who's really in their kind of happy place, they're fired up, they're in their power, they're that sort of natural magnetism that somebody has when they're talking about their geek topic or their kind of amazing restaurant that they went to last night or whatever it is, great playlist that they've made for themselves. Like, that is infectious stuff. That is your natural kind of source of magnetism, if you want to call it that. That is something that runs through every single human on the planet. It's not a limited resource. It's not something that we only some people get to have. So actually, like, in lots of different ways, all we're really trying to do here is put more of that to work in your business. But yeah, for me, it's like we're women in business. We're here to, you know, make sure we are financially stable. We're financially secure. Yeah. We're paying our bills so that we can do the things on top of that we want to do over and above. But we're doing it not from a place of, you know, push or force or even worse, manipulation. And we can get into that more maybe.
Yes.
But we're doing it from, you know, a 360 feel good angle.
Okay. I see you. A 360 feel good.
That is an angle, right? Yeah, that's an angle.
But I was thinking more about the name of my company, but okay, yes. So, Sara, how did you get to this point? Because we first met because we were in a mastermind together in 2020. And at that point in time, I know that you had worked in finance, you had worked in the city, you had transitioned to a photography business. And at that point in time, you were really transitioning into a mentoring consultancy business or expanding your photography business so that it included mentoring and consultancy for I think it was other brand photographers as well.
At
So
the
how did
time,
you get from where we were in 2020 to where you are now as a best-selling author, sales champion, and general motivator?
What a vibe. Love it. Yeah, great question. So you're right. I started out in the city in finance, in a total boys club is how I'm going to call it. So I think maybe I hadn't quite found the vocab in that mastermind in that moment to really sort of understand myself to the extent of like how strongly I feel about making sure women actually do sort of stand up for the things that they want, or they do use their voices, or they're not maybe shrinking down in a way that I had absolutely not seen role model to me at that moment in time. I'd become a photographer because I, loved taking photos. And at that point, it was simply a case of, I got to get out of here. Like, what can I do that actually is going to bring me joy? Oh, photos. Okay, great. And I was at that natural place in business where I kind of knew there was something else like nibbling away in my subconscious, but I hadn't quite landed yet. When I look back now, it's so obvious. It's always the case, but I was spending 90% of my brand shoots or my headshot sessions because my whole thing was like making sure if you're camera shy, you feel really relaxed and you feel really good, and that your photos actually really represent who you are. And we would spend so much time chatting in the sessions about, how business was going and how clients, how people were bringing clients into the business. And actually like 99 times out of 100, it was a case of like, oh, it's so hard. And I'm finding it so hard to attract clients. And I was really like, that's the easy bit. That's the bit that, I can really help you with that. So I think, I'd started to do some mentoring. I just hadn't really worked out, am I going to be helping, all business owners? Am I going to be helping photographers? What's the thing? But we were gifted a pandemic, weren't we? So we were gifted a natural stop of photography for 6 months, which actually really did help me in that sense. That really gave me the permission, if I needed it, to focus all in on what that might look like for me. And actually what came out the other side of that was, it is about so much more than just the, the visibility and the showing up in the photos. It's actually the whole, what are you trying to say? What do you want to be known for? And so that's what often comes out an awful lot of the time with the visibility and the sales piece, even though it isn't always something that people think of as sales, you're really kind of selling it to yourself first. And it's pretty difficult to do that if you're not really sure what the intention behind what you're doing is.
Yeah. And what led you to, so I remember there was a point in time where I was gobbling up your content and it was sales and marketing. And then there became a shift where whilst the marketing is still present in what you do, you really became laser focused on sales. What is it that made you become laser focused on sales?
I think for me, it's simply, people really don't like the word. People don't like to think about themselves as salespeople. And I really want to make sure that we are front and center clear that all of us are salespeople, whether what we're selling is a physical product, like you said, or a book or a podcast or your services or any of that stuff, or whether you're selling, an idea or an opinion or, something bigger than just, what goes on in your business. We're all here all day, every day, negotiating on things, helping people kind of understand our vantage points, our viewpoints, the experiences we've shared. And I feel like with marketing, like I think we have a bit more of a comfort level around marketing sometimes, or it doesn't feel something as frightening to do. Yes. But actually, like the business end of business, that's not great English, is, are we actually bringing people in? Are we bringing the right people in to work with us? Are we actually like, is this landing? Because I think we can spend years marketing our stuff, and people do, with limited result. I want to make sure, like I said, that the women in my world are financially stable. They have that solid knowledge that they can pay their bills as quickly as possible. So we've got to handle the sales end of things to make sure that is something that we all feel really comfortable doing, and that we sort of find our own identity within, because it's like, we don't have to do it. Like, I think one of the main reasons why selling feels so absolutely frightening and dreadful for us is when we think about how it has presented, how it has been presented to us in terms of historically, or like everybody can think of a stereotype about how, you know, they don't want to be sold to, or how, you know, sleazy it might feel, and we kind of recoil and run a mile in the opposite direction because we haven't had any role models in people who are selling really fantastic things in really fantastic energy that we all want more of. So that's really all it is. It's getting much clearer with yourself, much more honest about what you're bringing to the party and why it can really only be you that's bringing it to the party. That's the sort of sales I'm interested in.
Absolutely. And two things that came up for me is that when you think about sales and marketing, especially, you know, you and I both, I know you don't work exclusively with women, but we both work with mainly
Pretty
women.
much.
I work only with women. And marketing is girly. Just telling you about this thing, we're being nice, we're showing up, blah, 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 blah. Whereas sales, we have been taught to believe, is masculine, it's pushy, it's trying to convince people into what they don't want. And one of the things you kind of wave the flag for is we're not convincing anybody of anything. We are
Please,
being
for the
clear
love of
about
all
what we've
things,
got on
can we
offer.
not do that? Never. Please, we're not trying. It's not convincing anyone. It's simply giving people the information they need to make informed decisions that are right for them. So it's really not empowering to be in this kind of constant struggle of like, oh, I've got to do it, but I don't want to because I don't want to convince anyone. I don't want to manipulate. My kind of counter to that is like, it's very manipulative to present yourself in a certain type of way that you think is acceptable or free of judgment or is going to be palatable.
Otherwise known as people pleasing.
Otherwise known as, you know, people pleasing, good girl energy, but also like massively shrinking everything down to a version of something that's acceptable that isn't even current. It isn't useful to sit in that place of like, okay, as long as that person over there is not offending anybody, so if I just do it exactly like that person over there, I won't offend anyone either, which is what I would say like 99% of, you know, women in business are doing. And we can absolutely unpack all the reasons why that happens. We can see it as clear as day. And so it's no shade, but it's what we've learned is not serving us. It doesn't serve us to do it like somebody else, because that is manipulation. It's pure manipulation to stay in a version of something else because you think that's safe, instead of talking to people about the things that you want to say in a way that you want to say it, so that they can really see you for who you are and decide if you're the kind of person that can help them.
So the fact is, if we're not selling, we're not going to make the sales we want to make.
Right.
And if we are not making the sales we want to make, we haven't actually got a business. We've got a project. Because
we've got a hobby, a great one, a fun one, but
Yeah. So because, you know, I just want to, you know, labor the point. Sales is how we welcome in the money we want to make. And that is what makes our business valid. In a previous podcast episode, I was interviewing Yinka Euola, who is a strategist and coach. And her thing is all about cash flow. And she was sharing with us a situation she had where one of her parents was ill. They couldn't run the business. There was money that was coming in, but there was not enough money in the business at the time. And she shared this on the podcast. And they had to pay a bill or something, but they couldn't pay it. They said, the money's coming through. Can you give us till the end of the week? Then we'll be able to pay. At first, the person was saying no. Then they negotiated and said, yes, fair enough. But the person said, with no cash in your business, you haven't got a business.
Right.
So I want to emphasize that point so people know that's point one. And then point two, what I have found is that a lot of women, and I'm talking about women because that's who I work with, that's where my knowledge is, start a business not necessarily because they want to be a business person, but because they don't want to work for somebody else. Maybe it doesn't support their childcare situation. Maybe they've got needs where they need some flexibility. So they start a business because they want flexibility. They don't actually want to start a business. So they're so focused on flexibility, they're not doing the sales activity that actually provides them with that flexibility. And they treat their business like an employer that doesn't care about them, not realizing that you're the person who is creating the business that's treating you like an uncaring manager. So I'm going to say this to you, and then you just go wherever you want to go from what I've just said.
Okay.
Sales as a tool for liberation. What say you?
Oh, delicious. Okay. Yeah. I mean, to echo that point, it really is. I mean, we see it every day, like women, and it's new, right? Women don't necessarily start businesses because they have always had this daydream of wanting to be business owners, as you say. We are still in this moment where I would say we're the first generation of, everyday women who can set up in business almost on a whim. I'm not saying that lightly, but as a result of a terrible situation at work or an untenable kind of future in the kind of workspace or whatever.
Yeah.
Fantastic, all power to us, but we are still doing it kind of for the first time. Like, this is not something that generations before us have kind of shown us how to do or helped us understand. That's, maybe aim for a little bit more than, the bare minimum that you need each month, because as you say, that's not enough. Like, we're questing for like just enough to get by because that feels like comfortable for us to do, but actually that doesn't really work if you're then signed off work for 6 months or whatever. So we do need to think for the long haul, and I think that is something that we are having to work out in real time. We don't have a great deal of real-time role models, and that's why it's so important that there are places like this where we can talk about it and normalize it and really understand it. So if we're thinking about business and sales as a tool for liberation, we've got to see past what's going on today, this month, this week. We've got to be thinking about income in the business, in the bank, in a way that is extremely spacious, because we all have, especially women, we all have a lot of other stuff that drags us around time-wise. That's just a fact. As much as we might want to make, inroads into helping that change come about, right now, as we're looking at it, there are other things that we've got to be doing, and also that we want to be doing. I don't know too many women that set up in business because that's all they ever wanted to do 24/7. So it's kind of feeling into what sort of your, not the bare minimum is, but your minimum kind of standard around, okay, what do I have to do to make sure this revenue is stabilized? It comes in every month, it comes in no matter what, it comes in whatever available time I have, slashed into 4, because that's really all I'm prepared to spend on the business. So if we're thinking about liberating ourselves from the shackles of like the work kind of ethic that we are no longer here for, we've got to think about what else needs to come into play. So we talk about natural magnetism and actually like bringing our geek topics or our areas of specialism, or the things that we really know, upside down, backwards, forwards, we can do it in our sleep. Are those the things that are front and center in the business? Because I think that's another thing that people do a lot. They kind of go, well, I guess if I'm a business coach, I guess I got to speak about all of this stuff in business coaching, and I got to be an expert in all of it in order to be good enough. When actually that's just another story. So why don't we focus instead on your natural points of, I don't know, power, ease, the things we all have abundance. In terms of choice around the things that set you apart, right? The things that you're really awesome at, you're really great at, you're fantastic at, you're way better than the average person at, whether you've learned that through decades of experience, whether you just always were really great at it, but it was squashed to the side, whatever. Like, what are those things? Let's get them out. Let's get them out of the dusty old notebook and let's bring them into front and center, because guess what happens when you build your business around that level of ease? It doesn't take you all day to figure out what it is you're supposed to be saying, or what it is that you're supposed to be, putting into an offer, or what it is that you want people to know you for, because it's already right there. So what was the question again? It was about
I just want to say, can you see why my intro for Sarah was the intro that it was? One of the things I absolutely enjoy about you is, like, I can see parts of me reflected in you, because when we're passionate about something, it just oozes from us. We just radiate it all over the place. And when I'm selling something, I like it before I sell it. Like, I really like it before I sell it. It's not perfect. right? It doesn't have to be perfect, but I really like it before I sell it. And when I really like it before I sell it, how you're showing up right now, that's how Sarah shows up for sales. And when I'm really in something, when I'm on sales calls with people, I have to warn them. I say, do you know what? I am not trying to sell you on this. I'm just so passionate about this. I believe in it so much. And they say, do you know what? That's what I get. I don't feel like it's a hard sell. But if I don't like it, I'm not selling it. If I don't believe in it, I'm not selling it. When I believe it, there can be miracles when you believe. It's like a political campaign, right? I can't shut up about it. And I don't feel like I'm selling. I've got something to tell you. I've got something to tell you. You need to hear this. If you buy it, you buy it. If you don't, you don't. But this is some dope ass shit. And if you invest in this, you're going to be fucking blessed. Okay?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why you're so good at it. Because, and this is maybe something that you've always had, or is maybe something that you've learned along the way. I don't know. Or maybe it's something that we're just bringing into sharper focus that, as the years go on, because there also is this piece around as women in our 40s, I think we can talk to this a little bit, like maybe we know ourselves better in our 40s than we did in our 30s or our 20s. Yeah. Not always, that's a sweeping statement that isn't always going to be true for everybody, but the better you know yourself and what it is that you really find energizing, or that you really, the conversations that you really want to be part of, the more sort of seamlessly that will kind of fuel your campaign, if you want to call it that. Because actually, like, never mind who's buying or who's not buying, that's none of our business, and actually it should never be. We're never trying to worry about, is that person going to buy, or I really hope this person, what can I do? Like, that's not it with sales. What it is like, am I showing up? Am I giving people something to think about so that they can make their own decision? Because if we're not giving people anything new to think about, and we're only ever talking about our businesses in terms of skills or skill sets, or that really transactional, boring, like I said before, like, sales is often seen as something really transactional. And I think sometimes people think marketing is more fun because it is a bit more like campaigns and, whole, stories to tell. I think it's all just one. If you're a business owner and you're a business of one or a small team, it's kind of all just lumped into one. And we are going to get a lot more people. If you want people coming into your business because they are excited, they're fired up, and they want a piece of what they've heard you talk about, then we cannot just be talking about skills. We cannot just be talking about, in my case, pure sales. Like, there has to be something else going on, because I, for one, would get extremely bored if I was only ever talking about sales. It's not a long game strategy, because it's impossible to talk about the same thing over and over and over without getting bored. So that's another thing when we're talking about the kind of slightly trailblazing nature of women having businesses, or making it work for them, or doing it without burnout and doing it in the good energy. We've got to make sure that we are evolving out of the place where it's only about what you know, because we're not robots, we're not AI. We could definitely, we don't want to be faceless kind of marketers in that sense. You've got your brilliant book on show there behind you. I want to know that that's your book. I want to know, like, your name is the reason, is part of the draw. So I got to hear, like, the conversations that you are bringing forward. And I think a lot of people really create businesses and they feel that they got to stay in that initial box of, like, well, I'm talking about photography, so how can I now move into sales? Or, like, I'm talking about sales, so now how can I move into being an author? But we got to embrace that change rather than see it as something that's scary or frightening, and actually open ourselves up to having conversations that are so much bigger than the skill set. Because we're all multifaceted humans living on planet Earth with all the different things that throws at us. What do you want to say about that?
Yeah. I want to go back a little bit because I've wanted to have my own business since I was like 6 years old or so, because of the influence of an aunt of mine. Yes, who was an international businesswoman, and she just looked so jolly and joyful. I thought, if that's how you look by being an international businesswoman, that's what I want to do. So it's always been within me. Also, I didn't know I had ADHD. And I think that a lot of founders, a lot of business people are neurodiverse because we can organize work in a way that works with us. But I just want to go back to something about uh, being able to sell.
Yeah.
So, one of the things I talk about with my clients a lot is focusing on competence over confidence, because confidence waxes and wanes. Whereas if you're competent, right? So, I wouldn't. Maybe I am a natural salesperson. Like I posted something on Instagram about me speaking, and my mum started following me on Instagram
Oh,
because I update Instagram about all my book stuff more than I do our family
yeah.
WhatsApp group or however I WhatsApp. And she's like my number one PR
Also, a
person.
moment for your mum who is actually on Instagram.
Listen, my girl
Sensational.
is on
Second answer.
Instagram. My mum is the best PR person. I've got gigs courtesy of my mum. Goodness knows how many books have sold because of my mum, okay? And she's going to be a guest on my podcast soon. She's going to be
Oh,
a guest
amazing.
here soon. And so I posted something about speaking or something like that. And my mum replied to my story saying, yeah, you've been like that since you were about 7, right? So I was just like, good old mums. But what I want to come back to is that I think that a lot of the problem women have with sales is that they don't believe in what they're doing. Because the good girl, perfectionist, people pleasing kind of tendencies, we want things to be 100% in a way that is unobtainable before we feel confident enough to go with it. I've never been like that because I can never get myself, like I do have perfectionist tendencies in my mind, but my need to do what I need to do will always override that. And I just need to go. If I make a mistake, I'll clean it up on the way. I'm not going to do anything that's going to cause irreparable harm. And when we can focus on our competency rather than waiting for confidence, I'm competent and it doesn't have to be 100%. I'm competent, it doesn't have to be perfect. And my background is social work. I would be giving evidence in the High Court with QCs grilling me like I was in the Old Bailey, like I'd committed a crime because I wasn't agreeing with what their plan was for the family. I wasn't confident that I had done everything and ticked every box, but I was competent that I was balanced and fair. I know my shizzle, and that if I have made a decision, I have done everything within my remit to make sure, because I was making big decisions about families, I've done everything within my remit. And even though they might say, oh, well, you were late, you didn't do this report on time, da 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 da, I was quite sassy as an expert witness because I was competent in what I had done. And when I first started my business, I would say to my friend Nicola, who was my coach at the time, like, people are going to think I've jumped out of a cake. They're just going to think I've just come out of nowhere saying all of this stuff. And she helped me remember why I'm competent. So even though I wasn't confident because it was something new, my competence meant I was able to say, do you know what? It is new, but you also know what you're doing. You've got so many transferable skills. You don't have to believe, you know. So when I'm online selling something, I bloody well believe in it.
Yeah.
And there have been times where I've thought, I just need to get it out there. I'm getting in my own way. I just need to get it out there. And in getting it out there, I realize I don't believe it. So I'm not backing it the way I can. I don't make it a big deal. I'm not a failure. I'm not whatever. I just pull it. I don't owe anyone unless you bought it, I don't owe anyone any explanation. I will bring it back in and I say it's like the tea hasn't brewed yet. Like I'll let the tea bag brew properly and then I'm out. Pow. And I can do that because of belief. And it's even more than belief because I know.
Yeah.
And when you know like that, your nervous system is flexible. It's not locked and rigid and in survival. Oh my God, what if I get this wrong? You're not in a state of fight or flight. You're not in a freeze or a shutdown. You've got that flexibility, which provides you with the energy and the grounding you need to be able to show up online. So last year, this time, I did something, a week-long experience called From Content Creation to Client Generation. And one of my clients, who was at that time struggling with sales, she said, I've been observing you because content creation to client generation, I think in the end, I had like 134 people in it. And I kept selling it whilst it was running. I was like, it's not too late to join. Come on in. And she was like, I've observed you. And she said, you just won't stop talking about it. Like, you're making these sales because you just won't stop talking about it. I was like, exactly. And she said, how are you able to not stop talking about it? Because I know it's dope.
Yeah. And also that is the job. That is the point. The point is it's not this start like, okay, I've got to sell it for a bit and then I'm going to get people in and then I won't have to do any more selling for a while. I think this is what starts the sort of spiral of all this sort of struggle bus that so many people are on, is this idea that it's a start-stop thing instead of a consistent, like every day, like you should want to be talking about your stuff, because if you don't want to be talking about it, that's a massive red flag that maybe there is something that is a little bit out of kilter, not in full alignment. And you're so right about the competence. I use like the same thing, but the word intention for me is what gets so many of my clients out of perfect. We all like have this idea that it's got to be perfect, and if somebody's not buying it, it's because it's not good enough and it's not perfect enough, and then that makes people not want to talk about it anymore, or they maybe didn't want to talk about it anyway, so then they're stopping, and then they're just dogged by drama, because then it's like, right, I've got to create something new because that didn't work. When actually all you've got to think over and above that sort of competency level that you do know what you're doing, and really just to let that shine, is what is the intention behind this? Like, is the intention that you are trying to convince somebody to buy something they don't want, or is the intention that, you know, the reason why you're showing up is to make it easier for people to figure out what it is that they, you know, what it is that they need, what's right for them right now? How can they do that if you're not there? So what if all you had to do was talk about it?
And you know what, people, if you have a business online, both of us work online, whatever you post on that social media feed, whatever you share in your newsletter is selling. Whether you believe that or not, whatever you put out there is selling. So you're doing it anyway. You might as well do it with intentionality. May I ask you, in your book, you discuss the negative impact of sales stereotypes on women in business. How do you see these sales stereotypes hindering women when it comes to asking for the sale?
Well, like you said at the start, they're all pretty masculine for a start. I mean, immediately when you think of like selling or sales or sleazy selling, you think of used car sales. I'm going to say salesman, because it is always a man. Wolf of Wall Street, or, you know, somebody really like just out for the chase, that just wants the sale at whatever cost, is not bothered about whether you actually need it or want it or not. Most of us have had experiences like that, either in our formative years, or we've watched films, or we've seen, you know, it's leaked into our subconscious, whether or not it's fully conscious or not. But like I said before, like, your aunt aside, she sounds fantastic, but not most of us didn't have those kind of things in our eye line growing up. I wish they did. I love the fact that now, you know, young girls will have more of them. But what we need, you know, so your question was about why is that holding us back? Well, because everything we learned in education was very much about following the rules, regardless of sales stereotypes. That's one thing, right? They weren't good. They weren't created by small businesses for a start. They were created by big businesses, corporate boardrooms. And also the other thing that I always think about is like the pitch, like Dragon's Den. It's like, you got one moment, you got one chance, you better not blow it, otherwise whatever. Like, none of this stuff is appropriate for us in the small business community or in the online business space, because actually, like, that's a complete lie. We have every day is an opportunity to show people what's available to them and to help them, help them make informed decisions, right? So we don't have a time. There's no clock ticking. There's no deadline. There's no deadline in that sense. So it's about actually realizing that those stereotypes did not have, they weren't made for us. They didn't come out of this space. They didn't come out of this time. Even in the online business space, though, in recent years, there's loads of experiences that people haven't loved about selling. and it would be remiss of us not to talk about it. So let's talk about it. So yeah, of course, we see all of these like big bro marketing kind of strategists or people, having trying things that have come from, I don't know, like different spaces or different places, and it's deemed to be the one way to get things going. Like you've got to have it, you've got to have a launch, and you've got to do it this way. And I just completely do not believe in any of that, because actually all you need is your way. You just need your way. There's no right way. There's no wrong way. We've got to understand we are all salespeople. It's just whether you're actively selling or whether you're kind of being dragged through the process, trying to fit in or do it the way that you think is going to be the least offensive. But also like everything else that it means to be a woman, like growing up around like not speaking up or not being too opinionated or not having a safe space for the things that you want to say, they all feed into this too, because we don't naturally walk into business ownership with a cloak of like confidence or even desire to want to put ourselves out there in that way. So it's kind of a lot to move through. And lots of our belief systems haven't always been like that supportive, so it's a case of self-awareness. I think it's a journey of like self-awareness and knowing yourself and knowing what you are actually trying to say or what you're wanting to achieve, and then unpicking the beliefs that aren't serving you anymore and rewriting the ones that are. And starting with the fact that please don't do anything that doesn't feel good to you. Like if you don't like it, do not do it. But also, talk. I wish we could just swap out the word selling and swap it for talking. Because that's really all it is.
And I just want to piggyback off that and say that we also have to be careful about what feels good and what we don't like, because lots of people will mistake familiarity and predictability with comfort and safety. And as human beings, we are so very adaptable. We can adapt to really terrible stuff because we know how to control it. We know how to. So if I speak directly to, there are a lot of people who know how to under-earn. They know what to do if they're not earning enough money. They know how to stretch, make ends meet. They know how to be anxious about money. They know how to panic about money. And that familiarity gives them a false sense of control. So when they start doing the work to actually build money in a way that's resourceful and have those consistent sales and have those consistent mechanisms, there can be a lot of resistance, not because you don't want to have a good amount of money coming in where you're able to meet your needs, your wants and your desires, but it's so unfamiliar, you feel out of control. So you can lock that off. That can be really challenging, which is why having mentors, like I don't think I would ever be without a coach or a mentor, because regardless of how much work I do, those things really do creep in, especially as somebody who grew up. Like I remember seeing my mum particularly having to work really, really hard to get out of financial insecurity and all of the stuff that did to my psyche and how that pops up, especially when I'm about to up level or I make a conscious choice to do so. But the question I want to ask, because by the time this episode comes out, we would have done our event, more sales, more impact. How do like societal conditioning, gender norms, those kind of stereotypes we buy into, womanhood being conflated with martyrdom and being a good girl, how can being intentional and being self-aware support us to show up for our business in any climate?
Yeah, it's allowing yourself. So I think I like to think about this like, we have this idea that, I mean, like you've just alluded to, money is a lot of stuff to a lot of people. Money, it can mean pretty much anything you want it to mean, right? And for lots of us, it doesn't mean something good, because it means like, it can just bring up a lot of stuff, right? Yes. So whether or not we know we're doing it, a lot of the time we are stuck in this like climb, like we're stuck in a place where it feels safer to be just doing the climb. We're struggling, we're in the climb because that is what we've seen and what we know, and it doesn't attract as much like as maybe like having more might do.
Yes.
But I think really like with if your business is the way that you are paying your bills, right, and the thing that is supporting your family, yourself, all the things, we got to get out of this energy that there's like a good time and a bad time to be talking about that, because we do loads of things to look after ourselves. We go for a nice long walk in nature, or we might even go for a run if we're feeling particularly energetic.
Come on,
nobody's judging us. Yeah, exactly. Nobody's going, well, it's not, how dare you go out for a run when the world is so on fire and things are so, but nobody's giving you judgment for like doing that stuff. And actually money is no different. It's like a kind of, it's like air. It's like breathing. You need it. It's whether you like it or not. You cannot get by a single season if you don't have money coming in, right? So we got to, first of all, we got to be extremely clear about that. And I want to make sure we're talking about it so that that's not ambiguous and we're not leaving it to, all these stories that run amok in our brains about what it might mean if we had more money, what people might think of us if we kind of get too big for our boots or whatever, get above our stations, all that stuff. It's because we haven't seen enough people doing really good things with that money. And actually, we're just defaulting to that capitalist kind of greedy monster that is...
Finger snaps.
Right. I've completely forgotten what you asked me.
No, this is it. So we would have done by now this event, more sales, more impact. And what you're like, being able to sell whatever the climate, I don't know about anybody else. What I know about me is that social justice is one of my core values. And being a business owner puts us in such a beautiful position. We can work with our businesses so they're a powerful force for good. So this event we're doing, More Sales, More Impact, we are in a position, and I'm not even going to say it's a privilege because we have worked to be in this position where we have said the ticket sales for this, all profits will be donated to various Operation Olive Branch and medical whatnot for Medical Aid for Palestine, MAP. Yeah, we are leveraging our businesses as a powerful force for good. When I show up and sell all throughout the seasons, I can afford to pay my online business manager and my VA, who are getting paid a not even just a living wage, they are being paid a thriving wage. When I sell my stuff in all climates, bloody hell, I can make sure that me and my child are looked after and we've got the things we need. And if there is something, so there's a couple of things I'm doing for organizations that are very close to my values and my beliefs. And they've said, we are a charity or we're self-funded, so we don't have much of a budget, but we want to be able to compensate you. I'm going to pay you this. And I've said to them, fine, pay me this, and I'm going to pay it back to you as a donation, because I'm utilizing my business as a force for good. People might say, why are you faffing around taking the payment and then putting it back? Tax, okay? For tax purposes, right? That's why I'm doing that. Because I don't believe in mugging myself off. I know that a lot of people who work in the social justice space, because they have ideas about wealth creation that make wealth creation synonymous with the exploitative nature of capitalism, making money bad, martyrdom good, which is why there are so many people in the social justice space whose mental health is in the freaking toilet. Right. Suicide rates among people that work in that space is very, very high. I believe that when we utilize our businesses as a potent force for good, we make the money we need to make to take care of ourselves, and we can put that back in community. The work that you and I do, I don't know about you, but let me speak for me. The work that I do, even if I am just, in inverted commas, holding the space for someone, is very taxing. It takes a lot from you. When we're doing the work we do, we have to make sure that we are showing up for the person or the people in front of us. We're not saddling it with our stuff. We need to make sure that we are skilled in what we're doing. We need to make sure that we are keeping an eye on the market so we can navigate that. We have our own coaching, perhaps supervision to support our development, etc. All of that requires money. And those things, for me, are not a privilege. They are not because I'm high maintenance. They are not a luxury. These are core things that enable me to show up powerfully, A, for me in my life, B, well, A, my child, and B, for my work. I refuse to show up for my work in a manner where I'm under-resourced.
Mm-hmm.
I refuse to allow my business to drag me around because I'm looking all around to see what people are saying and thinking, and me adapting my behavior to that, and then having my business just kicking me around and not doing what I need to do. This, for me, is self-care, because boundaries are one of the most radical, important forms of self-care. And when I show up like this, I'm role modeling for my clients. That thing we were talking about earlier on about perfectionism, making mistakes, and all of that.
Yeah.
A big part of the reason people come to work with me is because I don't do perfection, because they see me make mistakes and I'm still thriving with the mistakes. And they're like, shit, didn't know that
Nothing
was
bad is happening when I'm making mistakes.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, that's exactly it. And it's back to that manipulation again of like, it's kind of manipulative to be like presenting as the person with all the resources and all the space and all the, good things, and behind the scenes being exhausted and having absolutely no time to rest, recuperate.
Yep.
And also I'm going to add in an additional point to that, which is, of course we want to make sure we are spending, we absolutely like social justice and investing in the things that we really believe in or the changes that we want to see. Whether you're doing that, ostentatiously, fantastic, let's normalize it, we need to see it. Whether you're doing it silently because that's something that feels more comfortable, whatever. If none of us, can really, we're all capped by our ability. If your bills are £50 and you've earned £50, there's no money for you to invest in that stuff. There's no, and then you're occupied. Your brain is occupied with, oh my Christ, how am I going to manage next week, next month, next? So that energy is so draining. So when we talk about getting dragged around by your business, we got to get it away from that space. Like, it's already washing its own face. And I have 30 hours a week now to be thinking about, what do I want to say? Like, let's give ourselves and each other more space to actually form opinions. There's if you can distill it down to the two things that women possibly find harder than anything in the world to do, it's one, to talk about money, be judged for money, have more money, hold it, invest it, whatever it is. Like, this is not comfortable stuff for us. We've got to learn it. We've got to be around each other. We've got to normalize it, right? Money, asking for money, getting paid for the things that we, find easy to do. Absolutely, a learned skill. And forming opinions and putting them on the internet. That is another thing, right? So you've got money and you've got opinions, and they both need work. They both need space to breathe. I don't meet too many women who are giving themselves enough space to actually form their opinions.
Ooh la la.
Which is really limited because they're full of like, but I haven't paid my bill. I've got to, we got to, we got to take care of the, of course. But we got to do both. And then we can really give from that generous space, whether it's financial gifts or time or conversations that really help other people figure out where they are.
Two things I want to say. So I was waxing lyrical about making money and being able to support the causes you believe in. I just also want to say, because I want to be very, very clear here, the causes you could believe in are Chanel handbags, right? The causes you can believe in is being able to go on lovely holidays with beautiful vistas.
To take your mum on a holiday because she's not been on, or to pay off your dad's mortgage that he's been working on. There's no judgment particularly around that, but this is not stuff we've learned how to do, right? Yet we are able to do it now. That's the brilliant opportunity that we all have living in this moment that no woman before us really, well, your auntie actually, sorry, I keep forgetting about
anomaly. Yes
But we can all do that now. We can genuinely all do that now, but we can't limit ourselves in this the climb of like, this is comfortable. So I just want to celebrate podcasts like this that really bring these conversations up for people.
Sarah D, I have 3 final questions that I'm asking all guests on this podcast.
Okay.
What is one actionable step our listeners can take towards their own personal liberation and well-being?
Only one. I can't pick one of anything. I'm a birthday girl. Okay, I'll focus. Right. It's this self-awareness piece. It's knowing your, like, the real intention behind, if you're trying to do something, whether it's selling a certain service or talking in a certain way, or I want to know, like, are you doing that because you think you should be doing it, or are you doing it because it really gets you going? Like, it's really a topic that you could be talking about till kingdom come if you wanted to. Because if we can really start getting smarter around, actually, no, turns out I'm not that bothered about this, we can really start to identify this kind of the things that do start dragging us around if they're left unchecked. So I would say knowing yourself, or like investing time, whether it's 10 minutes of journaling of a morning, or going on a walk and pondering, rumination time to figure out like the real intention behind what you're doing right now.
Love. Number 2, how can individuals contribute to the collective liberation and empowerment of their communities?
Well, they can start by selling more of their stuff, can't they? Because when we do this, when we take this off the kind of, this is non-negotiable, right? For all the reasons, all the conversation that we've had so far, shore up your business so it's bigger than like, hand to mouth, week by week. Like, are we paying the bills? This occupies too much space in the brain, right? So we gotta, I would say, evolve out of a business that's run that way and more into sharing our experiences, whether that's by having conversations like this, or writing more longer form content around conversations that kind of help people see what you're kind of fired up about and what you're powered by. Like, ultimately we all get to contribute to conversations or causes or things, change that we want to see. I don't think too many people are doing it because there isn't the space or the time, or because it might not feel big enough, or it might not feel, a good use of time, or what's the point? But like I said, we are real time role modeling for each other in this moment, because we didn't really have too much of it. So it's your experience, your shared experiences will help other people to feel understood, feel seen, see that they don't have to do it so perfectly. After all, nothing happens that's bad when you show up imperfectly, when you have your clear intention. So we can contribute every day, whether it's by selling, whether it's by sharing, in that kind of conversational way. And we shouldn't shrink ourselves down in the way that we often still are, for fear of being judged for doing that sharing.
Absolutely. And I just want to very quickly add to that. I heard somebody say that we have in Western culture, we have such an overemphasis on experts and expertise because it kind of keeps people out. And she was saying that we don't always have to think of ourselves as having to be an expert in a field, but we can consider ourselves as having something valuable to contribute to a field.
Right.
So based on what you were just saying,
the hierarchy, like your vantage point is perfect. Well, if we're not interested in the word perfect, your vantage point, wherever you are, is absolutely helpful to somebody.
Yeah, simple as that. Okay, final question. What are some systemic changes you believe to be essential for achieving true liberation and equity for all?
Well, oh God, there's so many different directions I could take that in. For a start, we could get more money into the hands of women, people, marginalised the communities that at the moment it's so skewed towards one type of person who's got the money. If we can get a bit more of an equal distribution going on, when, of course that's happening and it will continue to happen, what you end up getting is more people who do have the space and the kind of contemplation time to start talking about their own experiences. I'm not saying it's a binary link, because of course you can share without having your share of like financial equity, but the facts are that right now there's a lot more money in the hands of only one sort of person than there is. If we can share that around a bit more, we sort of collectively get a little bit more competent and confident around not shrinking ourselves for not being ready yet, or not being an expert enough yet, or all the things that you talked about there. So I think we've got to get more voices in the mix, more voices speaking about whatever their experiences are, and more people claiming more money for themselves than just the bare minimum.
More people claiming more money for themselves than just the bare minimum. Yes. Sarah?
It's so hard to stop talking.
Go on, one more. Go on, one more. Go on.
No, because
Okay,
it will just, we know.
It will be an all-day workshop. Okay,
Yeah.
so Sarah, we will finish there. Thank you so much for your time, your energy, and your brilliance. Before we go, have you got anything coming up for people? And where can people find you? Where's the best place to find you online?
Always the best place to find me is on Sales with Sarah on Instagram. If you're looking for a, super straightforward, relatable ways that you can talk about your stuff, in hopefully a way that doesn't feel difficult, then come and have a look. All that content on Instagram is there to help you show up in a way that feels good to you. You can use it for inspiration. You can use it for, pondering what might work better for you. You can directly just do it word for word if you want. That's all there for that. You can read my book, More Sales Please, which is all about how to show up on, the internet in 30 minutes a day. We are not here for all day influencing at all. We are here for utilizing it as a business tool and then getting off and living our lives and creating, thought leadership and things. So that's what you do if you're feeling a bit like you just need a manual, step-by-step guide. And you can also do my 30-day sales challenge, which is always available for anybody who wants day-by-day support for wherever you are in your business journey. Here a 30-day, a complete sales system that you can use on social media, on emails, wherever, however it is you like to show up. Because ultimately, until you are showing up every day for at least for 10, 15, up to 30 minutes a day, until that feels normal and safe and something that you really feel good and know how to do, you're stuck in that climb, and we want you out of the climb. So I would say those 3 are the kind of places to go and have a look. Awesome.
And there will be links, or wherever you're watching, listening, whatever in this, there'll be links for you to go and check those out. Sarah, thank you so much for your time, for being you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Take care, everybody. Goodbye. Thank you for joining me on the Liberated Woman podcast. Your time and attention is valued. I hope you found today's conversation insightful, inspiring, and even galvanizing. If you enjoyed the episode, please rate, review, subscribe, comment, and share. Like many things in our digital experience, the algorithm rules, so your interaction is vital. Your support helps me reach more listeners and attract impactful guests. Tune in for more empowering discussions and practical tips to help you live life on your own terms. Until next time, I'm Tamu Thomas, reminding you to embrace your joy. Podcast produced by me, Tamu Thomas, edited by Biongolia, podcast music by James Anderson.